We're here at the IRS Nationwide Tax Forum, San Diego, the last show of the season. I'm joined, with my pleasure of being joined by Catharine Drake Madeley. Catharine, what brings you to the forums?
I am here at the forum sitting on a panel with a group of IRS professionals and some other tax professionals talking about data security and what happens when you have a data breach.
And now, are you an expert in data breaches, Catharine?
Unfortunately,
Okay, maybe I should rephrase that question. How did you become an expert in data breach?
about 2 years ago, almost to the day, I discovered a data breach in my firm in Austin, Texas.
Oh my gosh. This is something that we all hear about,
Yep.
and it's something that nobody wants to even consider. I've run into a couple of practitioners over the years that have had your situation. What was the first thing that came up? After the panic? Because I can only imagine the panic. But once you realize it, first I maybe I should ask, how did you find out?
So it was September 13th, and we were working on some, pretty big partnership returns still outstanding. And I was walking past my office manager's desk, and she said that one of our clients had uploaded some information that an employee had been clearly working on that return over the weekend because that employee had accessed the client's portal. And I said, that employee doesn't work on that client's information. So we knew at that moment that something had gone wrong and that we had a problem.
Okay, so now that you had the problem, you recognize it. What is the first thing that you do?
Oh, absolutely. The first thing we did was we called the employee and called our IT company, confirmed that she actually was not in our system and that she hadn't been working on that client, and we shut her down from everything. We turned off her access to our network, to our tax software, to the portal, like anything that we had access to cut her access off. We shut it down immediately.
Okay, and then what was it? Well, I don't really. I'm assuming the employee still with you.
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. She was working towards retirement, and she retired about a year later.
Okay, but she did stay with you, so there wasn't anything malicious that you.
Absolutely not. What had happened was she had gotten an email saying her password to one of our programs was about to expire, and she just was in a rush, working busy, and clicked on that link to reset her password, and they got the password to reset her email. And then they figured out our portal, and then they went and clicked the reset password button to the portal, which sent an email to her email and allowed them to reset the password.
Oh my gosh! So first, I should ask this: was there any damage done to the client's information that you're aware of, and what did you do about that?
So we, I think that's a bigger question, in that we all have information out there on the dark web. Like, all of us have some sort of PII exposed out there. And so knowing exactly if we had a client who had a fraudulent return or had a credit breach because of our data breach, it's almost impossible to draw a straight line between those 2 points. We did have some returns that were got e-file rejects.
Oh.
And so we can make assumptions, but we can't, with the technology that we have, without like actual criminal investigation, know that those two are a straight line.
Gotcha. Now, with that thought pattern, what's our response? What was our responsibility? I say our responsibility as a practitioner. I'm a practitioner. What's our responsibility, A, to the client, and B, to the IRS in these situations?
So I contacted the stakeholder liaison's office with the IRS and got into a program that I was able to submit information about returns that I was about to submit through e-filing to clear those returns so that they would process those returns. So they basically flagged my clients to look out for fraudulent activity on my behalf and on my client's behalf. And the other side of that was the scarier part, which is calling your clients or sending out that notification. And there's what you're required to do, and there's what we did. And I think we went above and beyond. We certainly went above and beyond what we were required to do, because our requirement was that you do the investigation into the breach, and then you have a time period where you can notify the clients. But I knew really quickly that we had some pretty big dollars exposed and some pretty big exposure with the IRS and potential fraudulent returns. And so I, that following week, contacted every single client that I knew had been exposed because because of the nature of our breach, we knew what names had been looked at. So I reached out to them personally through email and through phone calls and had those hard conversations. But what we did with them is we helped them set up their ID.me accounts and get their IP pins and talked them through the credit monitoring service that we had with our cyber insurance and the dark web and the steps that they could do to protect their identities and under the circumstances. And so not only did we address the immediate concern of let's stop the IRS fraud, but let's help them protect their accounts beyond that.
I'm almost afraid to ask this question, but when you informed your clients of this, how did that affect your client relationship?
Well, I think that's one of the things I get asked frequently when I talk about this, and that is, it was really scary to pick up that phone and to send out that email because you're afraid that they're going to get mad at you. I felt like I was inadequate, that I had let them down, that I was flawed somehow. But not a single client was upset with me, and not a single client raised their voice or cried or pointed their finger and blamed us. They recognized that we were human, and they really appreciated that we were upfront and honest about what had happened and that we were looking out for what was important to them and we were trying to protect them. And they recognized that. We didn't lose a single client in this.
Well, that's encouraging.
And those clients are still clients 2 years later.
Oh, great.
And they're still referring clients to us. So I think it strengthened my confidence and my relationships with my clients. It strengthened their view of me as a trusted advisor. And so I think it ultimately built stronger relationships that I was upfront with them.
Fantastic. Now, you mentioned cyber insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And I have cyber insurance. I have B&O insurance. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Sign me up.
Yeah. Yes.
Got to cover. We've got to cover ourselves, obviously. How did that work? Was that an easy thing to work with? Did they do what they said they would do?
They did. So the first call, the day we discovered the breach, of course, all the big insurance companies, you're going to go into a queue. They're not going to give you any answers immediately. So they called us back that afternoon and said, we're going to hook you up with our cyber specialists. And so it took a couple days to get everybody in the room between my IT company and us. And this was September 13th. And so we had the 15th deadline. And part of that delay was on me because I had returns that had to get out the door. So that Friday, we sat down and we talked about the process. They actually initially advised that process where you do the investigation into the breach and then you do the notification. And I pushed back on that a little bit. And so they worked with me to do those initial phone calls. But my IT company and internally in our office and the cybersecurity specialists, we did things like work with our tax software provider to make sure that the EFIN and the PTIN use, that they didn't see any fraudulent activity on their side. They were able to scrub and do a data scrub of that email account that had been exposed in this situation and verify, like they put it through a machine and they scrub it for potential hits on PII.
Okay.
And so then they did a manual review of those hits to figure out who else had been exposed just through that email account. So in our case, one side of it was really easy because the portal is the portal. And so we could look at the logins and we could look at the information that was viewed and downloaded. But on the email side, that was a little bit harder. And they didn't ever get into our network.
Good. This has been so informative, Catherine. I do appreciate it. Any last words you'd like to share with our viewers?
I would say never trust an email is my biggest takeaway.
Okay.
And it's, our clients look to us to be advisors. And so just maintaining that relationship is super important. And it was hard, but it was ultimately okay.
Well, Catherine, I do appreciate you sharing your story with us. I when I heard you on the panel, I knew I had to have this talk with you. Because I think it's something we need to share with everybody.
Yeah.
It's very important. And it's something that I do appreciate you taking time. Thank you so much for joining me.
Of course. Thank you all. Appreciate it.